My name is Miss PG, and I recognize a lot of faces in here. I gave a lot of you flyers at the free concert, and I am honored and humbled that you are here with the two police chiefs and their panelists for this much-needed gun violence talk. So give yourselves a round of applause for showing up. And this is one of many. We are here today to ask all of you the question, is it possible to reduce gun violence? If so, what is the solution and how do we accomplish it? I would like for you to give the two chiefs a round of applause. That would be Chief Elvin Barren from the city of Southfield and Chief Jeff King from Farmington Hills, Michigan. They are the two chiefs that came together to make this happen. And now I am going to introduce Southfield Chief Elvin Barren for some opening remarks.
So first I'm going to start off by really acknowledging PG. And the backstory is she came to us and said, Chief, let's put this on. So give her a round of applause. You know, the purpose of this meeting is really to hear from all of you. What creative ideas do you have that we can use to further the agenda and send that information to policymakers? That's why you see the easels out front, because this is about all of you and the ideas that you have. You know, one thing I do want to start this conversation out is really applauding Governor Gretchen Whitmer, because she did have the courage to bring to Michigan common sense gun laws. And so there's a few things that came out of her decision to move forward with those common sense gun laws that you all saw pose some division within law enforcement leaders. And that was the idea of the red flag laws. So I want to unpack that very briefly because it segues into why you are here. So those red flag laws, they're also called extreme risk protections. And there are only a few states in our country that have these laws. California, Minnesota, just to name a few. So now Michigan is a part of this platform, and those laws are expected to go into effect sometime in the spring of next year. But one thing that kind of brought division among law enforcement leaders, and I'm going to have a candid conversation with some of the division, it was based on individuals and their political affiliations. And so, what's wrong with having a law that if law enforcement doesn't have the criminal elements to make a difference, but have a law that if someone suffers from suicide and they articulate it to a loved one their thoughts, if someone, you've seen it happen many times, talk about doing a mass shooting event, that they have an avenue, domestic violence, an avenue. So what happens is law enforcement, mental health providers, domestic violence partners, they can petition a judge, and that judge can then allow law enforcement to make contact with those individuals and remove those guns from those homes. So this is about saving lives. This is about prevention, not about politics. And so again, we're going to move forward with making creative, common sense laws. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Now we'll have opening remarks from our Farmington Hills Police Chief, Jeff King. You can clap a little louder than that. It's okay. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for coming out tonight and attending this important event. I would be remiss if I didn't thank PG personally. She is the brains and the muscle behind this, and we have to thank her again. So please, just give her one more round of applause for me. Thank you. This is truly my honor to be part of this panel of distinguished chiefs and directors of law enforcement in Southeast Michigan. Just to give you a little context of what we're here to do, is we're here to talk about reducing gun violence. And with that context, Michigan in the last decade had about an 11% increase in gun deaths related to either mental health issues or gun violence. Annually, we have about 1,200 fatalities in our great state. Over 3,500 people are injured annually in this great state. We have the 15th highest rate of gun violence in the United States in 2021. This has got to stop. And enforcement is a critical piece, but it's not the sole answer. We need some common sense actions that are implementable. And I've always said, if there's something that goes into law or a program that you can't get implemented, then it's useless. It's a great idea, it's a great process, a great program, but if you can't implement it and get it done, it's useless. And so what we want to do is we want to hear from you. We stand here unified in wanting to listen, accept your direction, your recommendations, and we're ready to work. So again, thank you all, and I look forward to tonight's event. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Now, I would like for you to say this name as loud as you can. Ronnie Dahl. You could do better than that. Ronnie Dahl. Ronnie Dahl. And one more time at the top of your voice. Ronnie Dahl. Okay. Ronnie Dahl built a reputation as being a fearless, relentless, and passionate investigative journalist. Her stories expose corrupt politicians, shady businesses, con artists, secret severance deals, and injustice within the criminal justice system. She has also worked as a public information officer for a federal law enforcement agency, gaining insight into the daily operations and procedures of the criminal justice system. Ronnie is known for being document-driven and a true believer in FOIA, which stands for Freedom of Information Act, and will fight the system to obtain public records. Most importantly, Ronnie Dahl is about helping you, the people. Again, give yourselves a round of applause. You can clap for yourself better than that. All right now. So today, she works as a private investigator specializing in criminal cases and consumer safety. So without further ado, I would like to introduce to some of you and reintroduce to others our beloved Miss Ronnie Dahl. And she will be your moderator for tonight.
This is one of the best things about all the years as a reporter is you got to meet so many people in the community and fight for them. I mean, it's been how many years since we did our story together? Maybe 2015, 2016, and we still keep in contact all these years later. So it's great to be here tonight. Thank you guys for being with us and being a part of this conversation. You know, for so many of us, as a reporter, there were times I was on the scene. In a weekend, I'd cover probably 8, 9, 10 different murders or shootings. There were times that you cried. You were like, I cannot go out on another story. Because while we arrived there in the moment for the families, that day did not end. And their lives were shattered. Not just the victims, but also the family members of those that pulled the trigger. They're forever changed. So hopefully conversations and events like today can spare one family. So I'm honored to be here. I want to say thank you for letting me be a part of this. And if we can, the other chiefs and the sheriff, if we can get you guys to just say a few words as well about why you're out here, what you hope to accomplish. Sheriff Washington? Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Raphael Washington. I am the Wayne County Sheriff. And let me just say thank you so much. Thank you so much. Chiefs Scott Gotti and Mike Dafer. And I see some Wayne County, Detroit community leaders here as well. So I'm happy to see them because Wayne County, Oakland County, Detroit, Southfield, this all one, really. We all connected by just a street, right? And so it's important to know that we are all here together for the same cause, talking about gun violence. And we can't talk about that enough because it's still happening a lot. And because it's happening a lot, we have to face it. And we have to talk about those things that we can change and the things that we are working on to change. And one thing, and I'll get to that later on in the evening, but gun violence, we talk about people shooting each other, but I like to talk about gun violence as where we're leaving our guns available for our kids to kill each other. And that's important. Somebody needs to say something about that, because that's very important. And that's one thing, talking about gun violence, that we can fix. We can absolutely fix that. And so I'm going to be talking about that a lot, as I do in the various places I have to speak about gun violence, because I don't want that to get lost on the fact that gun violence is us as adults who have the right to own guns, leaving them unsafe and somewhere where our babies can get a hold of them and use it against themselves and others. So we'll talk about that further, but I love this panel. I thank Elvin, Barren, our chief of police, who we grew up, he and I and Chief White grew up together in the church, in the Detroit Police Department, and we did it well enough that we're now leaders of our own agencies, and that's good. That's right? And Farmington Chief and Cooper, the Oak Park. So we're going to be talking a lot about gun safety and gun violence, and we thank you for this opportunity.
It's all about collaboration, and when you're in law enforcement, it doesn't stop at your border. So with that, Chief White, do you want to say a few words as well?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. Chief White, Detroit Police, and it's just an honor to be here amongst this group. As the sheriff indicated, I grew up. This is like being around family. Elvin Barren is just a magnificent chief for Southfield Police. So proud of him. Was a great partner in Detroit. As I look down at Sheriff Washington, I learned under him at DPD. I look down Chief King at Farmington Hills is just doing amazing work. Never seen the type of relationships that we're seeing out of these other agencies. And my buddy I grew up with, literally, shooting basketball in backyards as kids, Steve Cooper. I mean, just an amazing leader from Oak Park. So, we're excited to be here. We want to talk about solutions. 502 times in our city of Detroit this year, I've had somebody shot. Now that's down from 517 at the same time last year, but I'm not going to pat myself on the back and brag about 17 less people being shot, because I still got 502 people that are shot, 502 people that will never be the same, that are traumatized, loved ones that have to support and help them, and just the number of people that are victims of violence in our city is just unacceptable. Crime has no borders. It comes to Southfield, Farmington, Detroit, and the sheriff here's got the whole thing. So, it has no borders, and I'm so happy to see so many people, this turnout, committed to good ideas. So thank you very much for having me.
And if we can bring in Public Safety Director Cooper, you have a little bit of a different angle here because you are fighting things on multiple sides.
That's correct. Good evening, everyone. My name is Steve Cooper, and I have the honor and distinction of being the Director of Public Safety for the City of Oak Park. And you're correct. The Public Safety Department, we're tasked with providing police, fire, and medical first responder service. All of our officers are cross-trained. We get one pay, but we do 3 jobs, so that's one thing. I would be remiss if I did not take a moment and thank Chief Barren and the City of Southfield for hosting this event. I had the honor and the privilege of sitting up here with some of the most distinguished and just brilliant law enforcement officials anywhere in the country. Like I said, it's my distinct honor and privilege. And as Chief White was saying, that the crime has no boundaries. The collaboration between law enforcement has always been there for the most part, but we need the community to join us. So it's not just a law enforcement problem. If we want to actually make and affect change, we have to have all of you that are sitting out there today join in with us to really make some significant strides. And I know Chief Washington was talking about the handguns, and as far as securing those, one of the elements that I think is really critical is the mental health piece. There's so many people suffering from various forms of mental health issues, either diagnosed, undiagnosed, some are medicated, some are not, and that just leads to just a tremendous amount of violence as it relates to weapons and firearms, and we have to be more responsible with how we deal with conflict and a number of other issues. But like I said, I'm sure we'll dig deep into the weeds on a lot of those topics. But just want to thank you again. It's an honor and a privilege to be here amongst all of you. Thank you for taking time out to join us in this forum. And you could have been anywhere this evening, but you chose to be here. So thank you and God bless you.
We want to thank everyone for giving up their time, and you know, your officers are on the front line of this crisis, but the front lines, our law enforcement, is just one part of this problem. We cannot arrest our way out of this problem. It's going to take all of us working together and even thinking outside the box. An important part of this puzzle also is the judicial system. What happens after they're arrested? That is a big piece of the solution as well. And so for that, we want to go ahead and get a little bit different perspective and bring in 46th District Judge Cynthia Elvin.
All right, good evening. Thank you, Ronnie. I am so pleased to be here tonight. My name is Cindy Arvant. I'm one of the judges right next door at the 46th District Court here in Southfield. And I was asked to come here tonight and talk a little bit about the legal process. What happens in these type of gun cases? And specifically, what happens in gun cases involving violence. First of all, it's important to understand there are two types of criminal cases. There's misdemeanors, which are lower level offenses, and there's felonies, which are the more serious offenses. Typically, violent gun offenses are felonies. Misdemeanors are cases that we next door and all of my district court colleagues in southeastern Michigan, we handle a misdemeanor case through charging, through trial, sentencing, and probation. So we handle those cases from beginning to end. The type of cases that we might see on a misdemeanor gun case could be things like possession of a gun while you're under the influence of alcohol or drugs. It could be carrying a gun in a gun-free zone. It could be accidental discharge cases. We see those where people are cleaning a gun and it discharges. It could be improperly transporting a gun in your vehicle. So those are misdemeanor type offenses. Most gun misdemeanors are 93-day misdemeanors. So if somebody comes to court, that's about the maximum penalty that they could be faced with on a misdemeanor gun offense. Generally, sentences in those type of cases involve fines and costs. Almost always, my colleagues and I would recommend a gun safety class, that the person be required to complete a gun safety class, a requirement that they license any firearms, that they complete CPL training, and oftentimes forfeiture of that weapon, even if it's a legal firearm. Sometimes people make poor choices with a legal firearm that may cause a judge to forfeit the weapon that they have in their possession. What we're talking about tonight, though, I think, are the more serious and the most violent gun offenses. Those are felonies. The type of cases, and these are just cases that we've had in our court within the past few months. Carrying a concealed weapon, felonious assault, armed robbery, criminal sexual conduct with a weapon, assault with intent to commit great bodily harm less than murder, assault with intent to murder, right on up to murder. And in those felony cases at district court, we don't handle those past preliminary examinations. So someone is charged, they're arraigned, they have a right to have a preliminary examination in our court. If there's enough evidence, our court binds that over to circuit court, in this case up in Pontiac, and ultimately those individuals would go to Pontiac to have their case adjudicated. I do not have the stats. Well, first of all, I want to talk about how do the offenses get to our court. Law enforcement officers investigate. In our jurisdiction, it could be our local police department, it could be Southfield PD. It could be the Oakland County Sheriff's Office. It could be the Michigan State Police. It could be the Attorney General's Office in some cases. So our law enforcement agencies investigate criminal complaints. Once they've done their investigation, they turn it over to the prosecutor's office. In our case, it could be the city attorney's office here in Southfield. It could be any other local city attorney's offices. It could be the Oakland County prosecutor or the Wayne County prosecutor if the offense occurred in Wayne County. It could be the attorney general's office. In some cases, the attorney general's office charges individuals. Once those charges are issued in our court, the case begins with an arraignment. At the time, that individual is advised of the charges against them, they're appointed counsel if they need it, and bond conditions are put in place. In almost all cases, the condition of somebody that has a gun charge pending with us is that they not possess any firearms or weapons, and that they immediately turn over any firearms or weapons in their possession to the local law enforcement agency. We try to get in front of it by removing access to guns while cases are pending. I do not have statistics to share with you today, but I will say today that my state felony docket, not my city docket, but my state felony docket feels like it's involving a lot of gun cases lately. And I just this afternoon, 20% of the cases on my docket involved a gun, whether that was carrying concealed weapon cases and an armed robbery matter I had this afternoon. So 20% of my state felony docket today involved a gun, and that's a concern. What we're seeing a lot of, I think, in district court is cases that used to be a misdemeanor that are now increasing in severity because somebody involved in the case brought a gun. We're seeing domestic violence cases that are misdemeanors that are now elevated to felonies because the perpetrator had a gun involved and now it's a felonious assault. We're a dispute with another driver on the road. Just a standard dispute with another driver that could have been a misdemeanor assault is now a felonious assault because one of those drivers has a gun in their car and they pull it out. We're seeing traffic stops that would have been a misdemeanor driving while license suspended, but it's now a felony carrying concealed weapon because that driver has a gun right next to them in their driver's seat. We're seeing a family dispute that tragically becomes fatal or seriously assaultive because one of those parties decides to settle this dispute with a gun. So these are the type of felony cases we see. These are the cases that we hear every day next door at the 46th District Court. The majority of these cases do not involve legal guns. They don't involve a person who has legally purchased, registered that gun, obtained a CPL, a carrying concealed permit, and is responsibly owning that gun. But that raises an issue that actually Sheriff Washington indicated. We also face a lot of issues with legally purchased guns and people who want to have the responsibility of owning a gun, but don't take the proper steps. If you want to own a gun, you have to buy it legally, you have to register it. If you're going to carry it, you have to have a CPL. And most importantly, and most tragically, I think, that we see this all the time, don't leave it in your car where it's subject to be stolen, and then in the market of all of these illegal guns out there, don't leave it in your home unless it's locked in a gun safe or a lockbox and has a trigger lock, because the most devastating thing I think we see a lot of is when young people get a hold of those guns and don't know what they're dealing with, and we have an awful tragedy on our hands. So again, it's not just the illegal guns and the violent felonies, it also is a responsible gun ownership that I think we also need to discuss, and I think that was a point already made. Now, I do not have the solutions for these problems. Would that I could, but I do not. So that's why I'm really glad to be here tonight. I'm glad that we are having this conversation. I think it's important, and I'm so glad to be here this evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Judge. It's, I've been with families as they try to navigate the court system, and it can be very confusing and overwhelming. So we appreciate you giving us that information. I've been around this town for a long time. I know a lot of people are aware. My husband's family story is, it's one bullet that impacts a family for years to come. And my husband's father was an FBI agent that was killed in the line of duty. And I've had to watch my husband grow into a man without his father there. You think that one person, that one bullet, how it impacted and shaped his life, his mom's life, his sister's life, his brothers, his sisters, and you wonder, who would his dad be today? And I know so many of you in the audience, you experience and have been on that journey as well. And his mother has been a rock, because women in the course of pain will stand up and fight. And we all remember, sadly, 2012, the mass shooting that happened at Sandy Hook Elementary. And there was one mom who was a mother of 5 who took to Facebook and started a Facebook group that was like, how is this happening? How can someone walk into one of our schools and shoot and kill 26 people, little kids included? And that started a discussion, and it was a grassroots effort that now has over 10 million supporters and chapters in every single state of Michigan. And these moms are band together, they are fighting, and Moms Demand Action was born. And so with that, we are lucky to have with us here is Miss Ann Anderson with Moms Demand Action.
Welcome, and thank you all for coming. I know others have said this, but I also thank you for coming, for wanting to do something about gun violence to keep our communities and our families safer. My name is Ann Anderson, despite what the program may say. I am a local volunteer with Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. Although my journey began a long time ago when it comes to gun violence, I started with Moms Demand Action after the 2018 Parkland shooting because I looked at those young people and I said to myself, they shouldn't be having to stand up to do something about this. This is my responsibility as an adult to make things better for our children. I've been asked to tell you a little bit about Moms Demand Action, and then I've been asked to cover several facts regarding gun violence, and I'm going to try and go as fast as I can. I am probably going to go over the time I was allotted, I'm sorry, but that's because gun violence is a pretty complex issue. So first, Moms Demand Action, and I had a lovely slide presentation, but we really don't have the capacity for that, so I want you to imagine one. Moms Demand Action, we are a grassroots movement fighting for public safety measures that can protect people from gun violence in America. We pass stronger gun laws and work to close the loopholes that jeopardize the safety of our families. We know that gun violence is preventable. We work in our own communities and with business leaders to encourage a culture of responsible gun ownership, and we're committed to doing what it takes to keep our families safe. And in my lovely slides, I had photos of us local people doing just that, including at the domestic violence walk last year in Southfield, and also at hearings in Lansing this year. And if you want to find out more about us, we have a table over there today. And so you should be able to just get our information. I have a virtual card that you can get my contact information if you want to reach out to me, and so forth. The level of gun violence in the United States is unique amongst high-income countries. The United States gun homicide rate, for example, is 26 times higher than that of other high-income countries. On average, 120 Americans are killed, and twice that number are injured by guns every day. And as I said, gun violence is a multifaceted problem. So there's a lot of things that make up gun violence. One of the key ones is gun suicide. On average, over the last several years, 57% of the gun deaths in this country are actually suicides. 40% are homicides. Mass shootings and school shootings make up less than 1% of the gun violence incidents that happen in the country. But they obviously get a lot of play in the news and so forth, and the thing is, they are important. all of these are important. It doesn't matter whether it's 1%, 40%, 57%. All of these come down to people's lives. It's been mentioned already before. And those lives matter to them, to the families and friends around them. Michigan, to get into some comparison statistics, is about average in this country. We average about, and this number is going to be a little bit different than one that you had, but we average, but this is an average. Over the last several years, 1,300 people died in Michigan, as opposed to a national average of 43,000. We have a rate of gun deaths, and I like to talk about rates versus numbers because that accounts for population differences. We have a rate of 13.7 deaths per 100,000 people in Michigan. The national rate is 13. And here's a big thing. Gun violence costs, on average, $16.8 billion per year, of which $380.5 million is paid by taxpayers in Michigan. Nationally, that's $557 billion per year, of which $12.6 billion is paid by taxpayers. This is money all of us would rather be putting in other places in our communities, and it's certainly a problem all of us wish we didn't have to deal with. Gun violence is now the leading cause of death of American children and teens. It has surpassed for the last several years motor vehicle accidents as a cause of death. I had a lovely chart that I got from a U of M study that showed that gun deaths have risen since about 2013, and they spiked significantly in 2019. But the thing that was beautiful about this chart is it showed you the motor vehicle deaths. So it shows you the gun violence deaths rising as a cause, and the motor vehicle deaths started out really high, and then they just started to steeply decline. And why was that important? Because that change happened because we did something. When we look around at stuff, sometimes it feels hopeless, but we did that. We made things better for our children, and we can make things better for our children on this as well. That said, again, there's a lot of different facets to what goes into those gun deaths for children. Something to keep in mind is, has already been mentioned, access. 4.6 million children in the United States live in homes with guns that are both loaded and unlocked. What that means is every year, 350 children in America under the age of 18 gain access to a firearm and unintentionally shoot themselves or someone else. And that's just the unintentional shootings. In the first half of 2023, there were at least 200 unintentional shootings by children, resulting in 71 deaths and 137 injuries nationally. I was also asked to look at some mortality rates and other trends that has happened with gun violence in this country. And again, had lovely graphs. But I can say that when you look at the two big contributors, homicide and suicide, both have risen from 1999, which is the earliest I could get statistics from the CDC, to the present. And it's started to go up significantly in the last couple of decades. And in comparing numbers that are more current, because I was asked that by PG, I couldn't get them from the CDC because they don't have those out yet, but the National Gun Violence Archive, which is not as official, but they have numbers that are pretty close. In 2021, total gun deaths, 45,000. In 2022, 44,000. And right now, in July, 24,600. Mass shootings in 2021 was 690, 2022, 646, and right now we're on pace to possibly exceed that with 410 as of this time in July. Firearms have a particularly deadly intersection with suicide and with domestic violence. Across all suicide attempts without a gun, 4% resulted in death. When a gun is involved, that number skyrockets to 90. Firearms account for more than 50% of suicide deaths, but make up 10% of all suicide attempts. In domestic violence, access to a gun makes it 5 times more likely that a woman will die at the hands of a domestic abuser. And every month, an average of 70 women in the U.S. are shot and killed by an intimate partner, and many more are shot and wounded. And I know that Southfield has been working on the domestic violence issues and addressing them, and I'm really appreciative of the many programs that you have to deal with that. Gun violence disproportionately impacts people of color. So each day, on average, 30 African Americans are killed and 110 are injured. And that 110 makes up about half of the non-fatal injuries. African Americans are 12 times more likely to die by gun homicide. And another thing I really want to talk about is that we are a nation of trauma and of gun violence survivors. You're a gun violence survivor if you or a loved one has been directly impacted by gun violence. So you may not realize it, but you are. I'm a gun violence survivor, and the reason I can say that is because I was in an active shooter situation in my building in the late 1990s. It was in the Southfield Town Center. So this is actually a pretty meaningful event for me to be at. And I remember when Oxford happened, I was almost physically ill because of what happened, because it took me back to that experience. And I want to share with you, because of 54% of adults say that they have a connection to at least one gun-related incident in the United States. 1 in 3 adults admit to avoiding large crowds, such as music festivals, because of gun violence, and 1 in 5 changed or considered changing their child's school or avoided attending religious services. So what I'm trying to say with that is, it's changing, even if we haven't actually seen a gun go off. It is changing how we live. It's affecting all of us. The good news, strong gun laws, on average, have shown to be reduced gun deaths in the states that adopt them. And because I know I went over, I am now going to finish with that. And again, if you have any questions, we have a table and you can ask us there.
Thanks so much, Ann, and to all the volunteers. Again, if you're looking for an organization to get involved with, they are very passionate and very effective at getting their message across. And as we said at the beginning, this is not just a law enforcement or a judicial issue. This is going to take all of us coming to the table, and that includes our elected leaders. So let's go ahead and bring in Southfield Council President Michael Ari Mandelbaum.
Good evening. It was mentioned by Chief White and then again by Director Cooper that crime has no boundaries. Gun violence does not discriminate. As was mentioned, I'm Council President Michael Ari Mandelbaum, and I have a unique position of being a Jewish councilman, enabling me to talk more personally about anti-Semitism and gun violence. However, gun violence is not associated to any one race or religion. Gun violence does not discriminate. I would like to start by telling a story that hits close to home for me. On a Saturday morning in October 2018, as my brother was praying in his small community synagogue, he heard police sirens. As his synagogue was located off a busy street, it was normal to hear the occasional siren. But these sirens did not stop. Then he saw a SWAT vehicle, followed by more sirens. What could be going on? The synagogue continued their service. After the services had concluded, he walked over to a neighboring synagogue where a friend of his was celebrating a bar mitzvah. My brother was just stopping in to wish congratulations to the family. As he arrived at that synagogue, he found that it was placed in lockdown and had police guarding the building. That's when he learned what all those sirens were for. That's when he went into shock. Just a few blocks away, the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh was under attack. That's when fear set in. 11 worshipers, including a 97-year-old woman, were gunned down at the Tree of Life Synagogue. One victim was a doctor who was gunned down as he ran to help the other victims. Gun violence does not discriminate. This past June, that Pennsylvania man, Robert Bowers, was found guilty on 63 federal charges, including the fatal shooting of 11 people and wounding 7 others at the Pittsburgh synagogue. That verdict made him eligible for the death penalty in what is considered the deadliest anti-Semitic attack in U.S. history. The attacker used an AR-15 semi-automatic rifle and 3 handguns. After the fact, police found that he did not only hate Jews, but they were his intended target. They found social media posts where he also denounced African Americans with racial slurs and images which are related to lynchings. Gun violence does not discriminate. I asked my brother, knowing what happened earlier in the day, did he go back a few blocks away to the synagogue for the evening service? And he told me the following. The police told us that the threat was neutralized and it was safe. It was several hours later, so of course I went. Our grandparents were Holocaust survivors. We've heard their personal stories of fear. We've heard their personal stories of resilience. We know that our grandparents would tell us to stand up to anti-Semitism and stand up against gun violence and live our lives. Gun violence does not discriminate. The Anti-Defamation League is considered a global leader in combating anti-Semitism, countering extremism, and battling bigotry wherever and whenever it happens. The ADL works to protect democracy and ensure a just and inclusive society for all. And they also happen to have a walk against hate here in Southfield in October. A study by the ADL determined that anti-Semitism rose in the United States in 2022 and shows little sign of reduction worldwide as political radicals have gained mainstream popularity. The report found that in the year 2021, it set a new high for anti-Semitic incidents. And when I say incidents, I'm not just referring to gun violence, but incidents overall. With the coronavirus pandemic fueling a worldwide rise in anti-Semitism, the report added that 2022 did not mark a universal reversal of the trend, and in some countries, most alarmingly the United States, it intensified. Other countries with large Jewish populations, such as France, Canada, Argentina, and the United Kingdom, showed a decrease in anti-Semitic incidents from the previous year. The ADL found that the number of anti-Semitic incidents in the United States increased by more than 35% in 2022 to 3,697 incidents, or an average of 10 incidents per day. Anti-Semitic and white supremacist propaganda in the United States also hit new levels. The researchers found that visibly identifiable Jews, particularly ultra-Orthodox Jews, are the primary targets of anti-Semitic violence. Orthodox Jews are the main victims, not only because they are easily identifiable, but because they are also perceived as vulnerable and unlikely to fight back. The rise in Jew hatred in the United States is not limited to white supremacists. The anti-Semitism of the far right and the far left are pushing into mainstream of American culture and politics from both sides. While anti-Semitism in America is nothing new, since World War II, American Jews have lived securely in the knowledge that civil society and its institutions are a reliable buffer against discrimination, prejudice, and violence. Violent attacks on Jews and Jewish institutions in recent years have shattered that perception. Almost all Jewish synagogues and schools are now much harder to access, with many schools having armed guards at all times, cameras, special locks, codes, and key fobs to even enter the building, worshipers and school children can have a sense of calm during the day. In fact, these measures today, just a few hours ago in Memphis, Tennessee, stopped an active shooter from entering the building. The details are still coming together, but these methods helped save a number of lives. To this day, when my brother hears sirens on a Saturday morning, his body tenses and he thinks back to that frightful day in October. It could have been his synagogue that was attacked. It could have been his family and friends that were killed or wounded. He hopes for a day when gun violence will cease to exist. Gun violence does not discriminate. The obvious must be stated. Racism is racism, and Jewish racism is as deplorable as other forms of racism and should never be excused or tolerated. Gun violence does not discriminate. Thank you.
But now this is about the time that we want to get to work. So this is about all of us coming together. We are going to bring up the police chaplain, Ms. Rosemary Allen, to do a quick prayer. And then the volunteers have provided food to give you a little bit of energy, get your brain working. And so after prayer, we'll eat a little food and then we'll come back and we'll get to work and hopefully get some solutions.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rosemary Allen, and I am a chaplain here at Southfield. So my task is to do the prayer, and I know that I am standing between you and your food, so we are getting ready to pray. Can we bow our heads? Dear God, we ask your blessings over the food that we are about to receive, a sign of your goodness to us. Bless those who prepared it. Bless those who will serve it. May it nourish our bodies and strengthen the bonds that unite us in our faithful service. And Father God, keep us mindful of those who suffer from food insecurity and those that go hungry each and every day, for they are with us. Oh, Father God, when it's all said and done, we will give you all the glory, all the honor, all the praise, all the time. In the matchless, marvelous, mighty, majestic name of Jesus Christ we pray. And the people of God say, Amen. God bless you.
I have too many friends that died of suicide. I have too many friends that died of gunshots. But it's a lot have to do with mental health, and they don't have nobody to talk to. Kids don't talk to their parents anymore. They make friends with their parents. No. You have to be able to speak up, talk, what's going on with you. School counselors. We need to put back school counselors into these schools. Because, we're not going to be here 20, 30 years from now. Our children are. Our grandchildren are. So they have to set the foundation for what's going to be happening in the future.
Thank you so much. I'm so sorry about your friends as well. And, metal detectors has been a topic of conversation through the years. Chief White, if you want to take that one, because there are barriers to getting metal detectors in some of these schools.
Yeah, and a lot of them revolve around common sense. Brilliant comments, brilliant comments. Everything you said, I echo, but I don't need to repeat it because you were right on point. Metal detectors work, they're common sense. We use Evolve right now, which is a non-intrusive metal detector. We had a number of people get shot down in Greektown. We put them down there. We told people, listen, this isn't about your Second Amendment right. This is about keeping people safe and alive. And if you don't want to come down and party, you just go home. So thank you for that comment. And I'm a mental health professional myself. Don't get a chance to practice as much as I want to, but I will tell you, you are right on point. Impulse decision making is at its worst right now. People are reacting to every little thing with violence, and guns make them feel a lot tougher. I've carried one for 28 years, and I've been fortunate enough to only have to use it once, and that was on an animal. And it's not something that you want to do, and you live with it. And I hope we get to the point, and I hope Chief Barren takes your information forward, because just like we have emergency centers all night or urgent care, I would love to see the day that we have urgent care mental health facilities open at night. So thank you.
Ron Harris, what Chief White just said, opening up these mental health institutions. Listen, just as fast as former Governor Engler closed them and put everybody out on the street, I'm talking to these legislators all the time about you all legislators have to talk about opening these institutions back up so that they can get the help they need. Let me tell you something, the reason I'm so passionate about that, because I operate the largest mental health institution in the state of Michigan, and that's the Wayne County Jail. It should not be like that. It should not be like that. So you all have to call the legislators, and you have to tell them that they need to put these mental health people that need the help, seriously them, back in jail, so the Wayne County Sheriff won't have them back in the institutions, so I won't have them in the jails where they do not belong. Thank you very much.
And then lastly, to address your other question about mental protection in schools, so there are some representatives of the Southfield Public Schools here as well who are listening to this. Certainly there is a responsibility of the schools to make that happen, but we will definitely push your message to them for consideration as well. Thank you.
So, in the city of Detroit, $10 million of ARP funds has been committed to 6 organizations over a 2-year period for community violence intervention, which is CVI. Our national research indicates without an Office of Neighborhood Safety, ONS, to drive these efforts, they are doomed for failure. As leading Leos in the Tri-County area, what are your thoughts about CVI, Community Violence Intervention Program, particularly as it relates to advocating for the establishment of an Office of Neighborhood Safety in your local municipalities, understanding their roles in reducing calls of services? And so the ONS, Office of Neighborhood Safety, just like you have a headquarters in each organization, such like a precinct. So with community and violence intervention, please give your perspective of that. Thank you.
That sounds like a great solution.
That is a great question, and you're absolutely correct as well. In fact, a ceasefire here, I saw a few of our ceasefire people in Detroit. Can you stand up for a moment, please? So, ceasefire Detroit is here, and to your point, the data has shown that these programs are much more effective, as you've indicated, outside of the police department for a variety of reasons. And so for that reason, we have a CBI that we've stood up under the health department. Our deputy mayor is overseeing that process. You may or may not know that we have put, the mayor has put a significant amount of money behind our CBI. And we have these enforcement zones that are set up that are community-driven, grassroots-driven, not police-driven, that's going to help us drive down our violence in the city. And I think the numbers that they have right now is about over $100,000 per group that's in our CBI, with the opportunity of making significantly more dollars based on the data that comes out of that. So you're right on point with that. And Detroit is on the forefront of it. We're excited to see what our CBI does. In fact, they launch tomorrow. So thank you.
Chief King, if I can ask you one question, or if we can talk more about the collaboration amongst all the law enforcement agencies. Is there a way, or do you meet monthly to talk about how you can work together? Because as we mentioned earlier, crime doesn't have a border.
Yes, thank you. So in Southeast Michigan, we are blessed with many superior police departments that work collaboratively together, not just in what we do in our own communities, but we share that information. Our investigators are connecting with Southfield, Oak Park, Wayne County, Detroit. An example of that was a horrible situation at Farmington Hills, occurred in Farmington Hills, where a little 9-year-old girl was abducted and raped, and the individual that was responsible tried to murder her. Within, I want to say 7 hours, a detective that works the detective in Southfield that works for the Farmington Hills police detective in an all-theft unit, developed the suspect information of vehicle type. We then reached out to Detroit's intelligence center, who identified not only where the individual lives, his house, and within 20 hours, we had that individual surveilled. We had trackers on their vehicles. We had everything in place to safely arrest that individual through not only the collaboration of these 3 police departments, but the technology that each one has that can really magnify what we do. And it's not just interviews and talking to people, getting out there in the community, working with the community. That's that other piece where us police departments work well together. But the communities that we have, there was a courageous woman in Detroit that got that little girl off the street at like 10 o'clock at night out of a freezing cold. She's walking down the street, no clothes on. Somebody reached out, a community member was the hero in that story, saved that woman. Witnesses in Southfield gave that information to the Southfield Police Department to then transfer to us. Individuals in our community that work closely with us gave us that information. There's something that can't be overseen here. No matter how good these police departments work collaboratively together, we are nothing without our community. We are absolutely zero without our community. And so we have to work day in, day out. Not only do we earn each other's trust and respect, which we do, but we have to earn your respect, because if you're unwilling to involve us, it's a failing endeavor. It really is. That is the key to many of the police leaders up here, including myself. We have to have a strong, resilient community that we are part of. That it's not us and you, it's we. And that is the key to a lot of these situations.
So with that, Mike.
Good afternoon. I'm glad to be here with a group of concerned citizens. My feeling is that we need to nip this in the bud by instituting preventive education in the elementary, middle school. And that prevention education would be drugs, bad behavior, things of that nature. I know everything boils down to finance. I'm pretty sure our assistant superintendent can attest to that. But the more we get them younger, then there's a less chance of them not performing in high school. And then they're out on the streets trying to make a living the best way they can. So I'm in favor of prevention education. First of all, alcohol, marijuana, and vaping is number 1. And then after that, we just need more resources.
So with that, if I can ask you, Director Cooper, because Oak Park, we're a little bit smaller. Are you able to get into the schools and at a young age?
We are, and what the gentleman said is absolutely correct. We want to get the kids at a young age and preach prevention. We have what we call community resource officers, and I actually have 2 in the city of Oak Park, and we serve, one of the unique things about Oak Park is we serve 3 different school districts in our city. We have Oak Park, we have Ferndale, and we actually have the Berkeley School District, as well as we have Jewish schools, we have preschools, and we emphasize that we have a program where we're actually on a schedule where we get them in at the preschool and the elementary school age. Usually at that age, the kids, they really love you. They absorb a lot of the information that you actually feed them. And once you get to the high school level, a lot of times they, not saying you can't touch them, they've already developed certain impressions and ideals about the police, and it's really easier, and it's a great tool to be able to affect them at a very, very young age. So we're in there constantly, weekly, daily, doing exactly what you're talking about. And I'm sure the other departments up here have school resource officers and community resource officers that are doing the same thing. So, yep, I agree 100%. You can't have too much, and you got to keep pushing forward. Get them at a young age, absolutely.
You know, it's funny, I don't have kids. I'm a pet parent for a reason, but I never thought about it. Usually when you see a little kid and they're doing something, they'll see an officer, they'll say, you better not do that, I'm going to make him arrest you. And an officer said, no, we never want to say that to little kids, because then they think the police officers is the bad person instead of the good people to go to for help. So it's always about perspective, and I'm sure there are other adults who have said that innocently, but they can stick with it.
That's a great point as well, and that's one of the things, we're trying to diffuse that. If you have a situation, and the parents, I'm sure the adults don't mean any harm, they want to just probably instill a little fear or want the kid to straighten up. But as officers, we try and come in and diffuse that, say, hey, no, we're not here to hurt you, we want to harm you, we want you to do what mom and dad says, and kind of get down on their level and actually explain it to them in words and phrases that they can understand. But great point.
Mia?
Thank you. First, I'd like to say thank you all for coming together. This is something that we've been fighting for, to have everybody coming together to address this gun violence epidemic in our community. Alicia, I've seen her, she made a very good point. As a licensed clinical mental health therapist, I would say that we definitely have to have more access to mental health. But also, I think we also have to look at our root causes. And the root cause is poverty. We know this. When we have areas with high poverty, we're going to have higher crime. So we know this. That is a fact. That is evidence-based. So we need to address ways in which to address poverty. When people can't eat, they get desperate. They're hungry. When people feel unsafe, then they're triggered to do something to feel safe.
As we as instructors make sure that we talk about safe gun storage. 3 things I have to concentrate on when I'm talking about gun CPLs holders and those that want to be CPL holders. First thing we got to talk about is safe gun storage. That's first. Then we have to talk about how to use the gun, because a lot of people don't know how to use a gun. Who's teaching you how to use a gun other than how to shoot a gun? There's a lot of components that come with that. And then it's when to shoot, because that's the unlikely part, that being a CPL holder, that's the unlikely part, that you won't even have to use a gun. But you're going to have a gun in your home all the time if you're a CPL holder, if you just want a gun for your home. So we have to talk about safe gun storage and what that means. I was talking to a gentleman not too long ago over here during the break, and he was talking about how do you secure a gun in your home, and you need it for protection in your home. And those are the things that we have to teach, that we teach and we talk about. When we talk about just because you're a CPL holder or you have a gun in your home for safety, doesn't need to be secured when I'm asleep. You have to talk about if you have children in your home, or you have kids in your home, teenagers who walk at night, who walk around your home at night. Know you have guns in your home. If your gun is not secured and they get a hold to it, then what? When you have a gun in your home and someone breaks in your home because you didn't want to secure your gun properly, then there's another gun out in the street to be used against you and us as law enforcement officers. There's a lot to owning a gun and then understanding how important it is to secure your weapon. So I say, if you want to be a CPL holder, then that's your right. If you want to be that, you got to make sure you go into a reputable CPL instructor and learn all those components of what it takes: safe gun storage, gun safety, and when to shoot. You have to find that person. And if you're looking for that person, you can ask me. I'm not instructing as I used to be. I'm not talking about me necessarily, because I'm busy, extremely busy. But every single person, I've probably certified over 1,000 people in the time that I've been an instructor. Every time there's an accident or every time there's some kind of shooting, I hurry up and go to my directory to see if it's somebody that I taught. And fortunately enough, and proudly I'm able to say that it has not been, because I'm going to make sure that you get the right instructions when you want your gun and if you want to be a CPL holder. If you want to do that, talk to me. I can direct you to the right people, if not myself. So thank you so much.
I know a lot of the departments give away free gun locks. There's some on the tables over here, and sometimes you go to community events and the kids are like, "Oh, I can lock up my bike," and you're like, "No," but at least they're taking it home. And it's, even if it's not getting used for a gun, it's getting used for a bike, but it's a conversation. You know, if a kid comes home with it, the parent's like, what is that? And it's a conversation, and I know there are free giveaways, so that's a great solution, or at least a part of the solution.
Before we get to the conversation of gun locks, we did invite Mr. McMurray from the RAC here. Because what the RAC provides, because we have free ones here, but a more advanced system to safely store your weapons. So take a look at what he has to offer before you leave, because he has some great products over there.
What do you want to suggest?
Well, I just want to suggest, one thing I want to say is I want to piggyback off the chief saying, your community is only as big as you are. If you're not paying attention to the people in your surrounding areas, you're going to have problems. I worked 30 years in the prison system, and the one thing the guys didn't want to do, they didn't want to be at a prison where people told. They go to the administration and say, get me out of here. Too many eyes on me. So that goes back to your community. But what I wanted to say was, what I think is important is at the state level, the state corrections level needs to be more intense with you guys within each region. Let them know when guys come off parole, there should be a panel of detectives, I don't know who, sitting there saying, we are watching you. Get your act together. Get your act together. You have to play hardball and be tough on these guys coming out. Because a lot of the guys who come out help create a lot of the mess that's going on within your communities. Because they've gotten comfortable and it's easy for them to go back to their old ways. Whether it's their loved ones, not giving them the tough love they need. Things get tough and guys will go back to their old ways. So what I'm suggesting is, at the law enforcement level and at the state level in corrections, there needs to be a more intense focus, somehow. You know, I think that'll help.
And a big part too is employment. What are we going to do? Because when you have a felony on your record, it can be hard to get employment and even to get a place to live, which then can force people back to their old ways. Any comment up there about that?
You know, I think we have to get to a point where safety is a mandatory condition for all of us. And I agree with literally everything I've heard tonight, the socioeconomic impact to crime. I certainly understand, you know, that there are a number of things that drive people to commit crime. I understand, you know, all of that. But we also have to understand that our safety as a people is important. And, you know, one of the reasons I refuse to participate in scared straight programs for kids, because aside from the fact that they don't work, is the fact that they're already scared. And so I can't over-scare you into doing the right thing. What we have to do is give you an opportunity to do the right thing. And you look at, I'll be the old person in the room. I grew up poor in the city of Detroit. You know, but we had things to do. We had rules that we operated with. We played baseball in the street or in vacant lots. We played football in the street. We used the swim mobile, and somebody opened the fire hydrant a couple times a summer. That was fun, right? Now, everything is so intensified with every single situation that the result to losing a fight is killing somebody. And I think that those standards aren't just the police, they're in the police. The community. The community has to set the tone that this is unacceptable. And we do that in a number of ways. So I'm a data-driven person. My department is a data-driven department. And just to share some statistics with you, this year alone, year to date, 3,765 guns were recovered off the street. 3,765. Last year, 3,640. But still with that, we have had, day 212, right? 212th day of the year. And we have had, so day 212, we've had 502 people shot. So that's 2 people a day, right? 2.5 people a day. So even getting 3,765 guns off the street, we still got 2 people getting shot a day in the city of Detroit. And why? Well, somebody leaves a gun in the car. somebody gets a gun, somebody steals a gun, somebody goes to a club, doesn't want to get stopped at the door with the gun, so they leave the gun in the car, somebody takes the gun out of their car, somebody has an argument or a fight, and instead of losing the fight, they go get the gun and shoot somebody. Somebody breaks up with the girlfriend gets a new boyfriend, and that's in Southfield, the case that we worked on, and the person decides he's going to now shoot the girlfriend. These are all impulse decisions that are being made. We can't keep blaming COVID. COVID was the illumination of a bigger problem that we have failed to address. We've got to get people help. Every time I see people doing community service, cleaning up the freeway, I get angry. And people are like, "Oh, you're angry about that." That's a good thing. No, it isn't. Because I'd rather have that person who I've got their attention in a mental health training program, in a job training program. If you give them the mental health services that they need, if you give them the job that they need, they're not going to dirty up the freeway in the first place. You're going to have them on the corner cleaning up the freeway. When you have someone's attention, give them the help.
What you're saying. I'm a public health professional, and I think that gun violence is absolutely a public health problem. I appreciate what you were saying about mental health facilities. Unfortunately, cost is a huge barrier, as we all know. A lot of people won't seek services because then they know when they're out after that 3 days or whatever, then they have thousands of dollars of bills to pay, and then they can't move forward. So it's really hard for someone to go and get that help. Even just talking about therapy services, I mean, it can be $175 without insurance just for a 1 hour session. So I would love to see some cost sharing programs, ideally through the state. Even if we looked at workplaces doing cost sharing programs for these mental health services, I think that would be incredibly beneficial. We also need more collaboration with the health department and the CDC. A lot of policymakers are data-driven. They're not going to move forward unless they have that data. If we have more research looking at the social determinants of health.
A lot of good solutions there, but I think some of it starts with trying to understand the numbers. And when you get to the federal level, there hasn't been a lot of tracking of the gun violence numbers through the years. How much will having that data help your departments in addressing the problems? I know you have internal data, but to be able to share it on a statewide and with your neighbors.
Yeah, and I do want to acknowledge your comments, and certainly you saw these pins at work writing that really good information down. We appreciate you bringing that to our attention. Give her a round of applause for that. Data is vitally important. That we're all a data-driven police department. I think Chief White said that in his remarks early on. Data gives us the information. It allows us to articulate when we go before legislators or individuals trying to give out grants, for example, to provide that data based on the research that's being done. So it's very important. It's something that I continue to do. You also mentioned about the importance of mental health and our departments really being invested in mental health training. And so what I would like to really alert the community on, we have got a number of dynamic mental health professionals involved in our respective agencies. In addition to that, because police officers are responding to these situations, we have to make sure that they're mentally sound as well before they come to you. So we do have in place our own peer support programs. Certainly in Southfield, we call it the Critical Incident Stress Management Program. And these programs, again, have medical clinicians working with our police officers post-trauma responses. So thank you.
Any of the other chiefs want to talk about some of those issues?
To help these as a mix of police officers, and I know Chief White is here and you can talk to that too if he chooses, but we do try to make sure our officers are equipped mentally when they're going to these runs, or even in our Wayne County Sheriff's jail. We go for crisis intervention training through DEWA and Joint Wayne Integrated Health Network to make sure that our officers are getting the proper training when they're approaching or when they come in contact with those who are dealing with mental health issues, because they need to understand, our officers have to understand, that they're dealing with a condition. It is not the person. So when we're doing rounds in jails and we're on our mental health floors and they're getting feces and urine thrown at them, that they don't lose their mind, that they understand that's a condition. They're dealing with a condition. So we're making sure that they're getting the training to know how, that when those things happen, that they understand how to treat those, how to work with the action that's being brought to them, that they don't respond in a negative way, that they understand. And you can only get that in training because we're all human beings. If you ever have feces thrown on you, it's a terrible feeling. But again, we're dealing with those loved ones of someone, and even our loved ones who end up in these institutions because of the condition that they're suffering through.
The mental health training is something that obviously I think most departments realize that you have to have. It's still a challenge. A lot of times when you're dealing with someone who's having a mental health crisis and you get to a point where family members have to actually contact law enforcement because they can't control that particular person. These people are oftentimes violent, they're unmedicated, they're out of control, so they're in a very crisis type situation. And law enforcement, unfortunately, at times have to come in, we have to use physical force to restrain the particular person. It's not pretty, and it's something that we don't like to do, but unfortunately, that's still a challenge. A lot of times there's no magic word that you're going to say to somebody who's experiencing a mental health crisis. It's going to be able to calm them down at that particular point. So we try to safely restrain them, get them to a mental health facility where they can be evaluated, if they need to be medicated, or what other treatment they need. So just wanted to make sure we add that piece in there as well.
Thank you.
There are 43 police departments. We worked with the chief. We had it at our church. And we had a mile-long line of people wanting to give their guns back. We have too many guns in our county. We have 1.2 million people in Oakland County, and we've probably got about 1.5 million guns. How can we get those guns back? I'm familiar with the fact that anybody can just drive up to a police department and give their gun away. But when you have the publicity around a gun buyback, and you give me even something small, just a $20 gift card, people will say, oh, I got to get that gun out from underneath my bed, right? Because when a gun is no longer in the home, it can't be stolen. A kid can't use it. Somebody who's going through a mental health crisis can't use it on their own. I was, when we did that buyback, Chief and I were talking with Stephen Henderson at the radio, and he said, oh, well, your church must have a lot of gun violence. I said, actually, no. But I will say, especially during COVID, I was getting those calls from people saying, I'm at the end of my rope. And I really don't want a gun in that house. And so for those reasons, I like to advocate that. I'd like to hope that we can do more of those. I think it's a good use of church resources. I think it's a good way to make a dent on gun violence.
How successful are those programs?
Well, I think I'll take this one. Let me stand up. Originally I was not an advocate of gun violence. I had the vantage point of, at that time, that criminals are not going to turn their guns in, which is a fact. We're not going to turn their guns in. But then I began to open my mind up, and I said, well, wait a minute. How many guns do we see daily across the country end up in the hands of children? How many times do you see guns that were owned by responsible gun owners, if you will, they die, and then those siblings get a hold of those guns and they move them forward into the streets. So then I began to say, well, children are dying, these guns are making their way through the neighborhood, I'm going to get on board and support the program. So with fathers, y'all, we had a successful gun buyback. Certainly, we learned a lot from that gun buyback because it went quickly, the lines were right all the way down the street. And we're going to do a better job of managing, how much we place on each weapon. But it was our first go around there. So I think it's something that we do need. We got to manage it, and then we have to convince other law enforcement agencies that think like I once thought, that this is something that can be beneficial to the community.
Thanks so much, Chief Earl.
I have several suggestions for solutions. I'm only going to express one. And with the help of this panel, your force, and the community, we need to start a campaign in Michigan, go across America to force Congress to enact law to ban ghost gun and assault weapons. Only the armed force and the police department should use those guns. The criminals on the street and the general population outguns the police department, and they do damage to those who's supposed to protect us. Thank you, panel. We hope you'll work for this, and I hope the community will work with us to get this done.
Thank you. Yeah, we haven't even touched on those guns at all this evening. Does anyone want to explain what they are? So a ghost gun is like an unserialized gun, and they can sell them in a kit, and it is legal. And so there is, I think, some federal talk right now. It's in the court system to try to change that law, but it's held up in the court system. Chief?
To go a couple steps farther, there's manufacturing programs and equipment right now that can remanufacture guns that were typically stamped in a manufacturing plant with a serial number. And what people are doing is they're producing these bits and pieces of these guns, these ghost guns, putting them together. They're not traceable, they're not trackable, and what they're doing is they're just flooding them out there in the community. And people are using them not for home defense, not for legal purposes. They're using them in illegal, nefarious, deadly situations. And they're able to make these guns in their home. And the whole point about a serial number gun, it's trackable. There's several different ways to track it, and it's tracked on a national level. But these guns just literally, they don't exist on any kind of record, but they're out there and they're doing the same amount of damage, death, and destruction that properly manufactured and registered guns are doing. And they're out there. They're out there in all of our communities. Our community is not immune to it. We recently ran into someone who not only had a couple ghost guns, but they had the ability to manufacture them that was really eye-opening. And that legislation has to be front and center in regards to ghost guns. These things are just going to be made and out in our community, harming not only the police departments but the community. And that has to be done soon.
Because the reason is because he fought hard for programs for those children that lived over there. And before it was dedicated to him, there was a very few people who fought for programming for children that lived over there. Not only that, it was a soup kitchen there, and the children in that neighborhood, we all went to that soup kitchen and we all went to that recreation center. And I could cry because it's so detrimental to me and my family, because we all went there, we got tutoring, I was in Girl Scouts, I learned how to golf, I learned tennis, anything that we needed, all of the kids in the community went there. It was in walking distance, blocks away. Children need outlets. They need people who care. It wasn't many. It was one or two people who showed us how to socialize, who showed us how to be a community, who showed us how to stand up for each other in the neighborhood, because all of us went to the same schools. Children who wanted to fight, they showed us how to display anger, how to show emotions. And many of those children are okay today because of that community center. So when we talk about mental health, it starts with before they get to the community. Let's have a ban on these video games that they're playing. That's where a lot of this programming is coming from. The TV shows that they're watching, the music that they're listening to. Let's work on those things and provide them outlets in our communities that's accessible to them, that's free, that's allocating money to programming that's helping them to become sociable, to know how to display their emotions, to know how to be a human being in a society that's civilized. It is programs out here that can help them. And that starts with getting them out of the house, getting them out. I used to go outside all the time. And my mother was a drug addict until the day she died. She made sure we went outside. She made sure we was a part of the community. Even if we didn't have food, we ate at the soup kitchen. We didn't feel no different than any of the other kids in the neighborhood. And that's because of the community. That was because of that recreation center. That was because of the school. Everybody worked together. Let's learn community again. Let's start with getting children out the house, giving them an outlet, showing them that someone cares. It starts there first. Thank you so much.
And thank you to your neighbor that ran the community center and made it happen. Ann?
Hello, there's been a lot of great ideas, and I'm just going to say something that's going to, it's more of an augment to them. Earlier, you guys mentioned that laws are no good if you can't enforce them, if there's no ability to have an enforcement component. You need the tools, and so does the community. So I'm saying that another thing that needs to happen here is education. Educating the community and the adults. I'm not talking about the kids, I'm talking about the community and the adults. Education about secure storage and what your options are. Education about things like the BSMART program where you learn to ask other parents before your kids go over, hey, do you have guns there? Make that a normal conversation. But also upcoming laws like the Extreme Risk Protection Order laws. They are no good if people do not understand that they are available and how to properly use them. And also educating the community on the resources available to them. So we've talked about mental health, we've talked about job opportunities, we've talked about addressing poverty. We need to have like a central place where people can go and find out what's available to them. And then from that, we can start addressing this, because some of these programs are out there, but people don't know about it.
Yeah, not get lost in that government loop when you call. We have just about 5 minutes left because we want to let you guys wrap things up.
Okay, I'll try to be short and sweet. There was a comedian, I think it was Chris Rock, and he said that if you made bullets $100 a piece, that would cut down on gun violence. I was wondering if there could be any regulation for the sale of bullets. And I just came with the idea, and this might be a crazy idea, but if we made gun owners have liability insurance for every firearm that they had, and it would have to be a separate, naming of every piece that they had, and they could only buy ammo for those particular weapons that they were registered and they had insurance for them. And if they did not have insurance, that piece could not come out of their house for any reason, even to go to the gun range. And also, the more lethal the weapon, the more insurance, the higher the insurance policy. I worked with some people, some suburbanites, who bragged about how they stockpiled very lethal weapons. If they had to pay insurance on them, I bet you they wouldn't be buying so many guns.
I know that they do offer insurance, though. There are some homeowners that get insurance. Is that correct? I think so. Come on, step on up.
Hey, Ronnie, you do a great job. I'd like to thank everybody who put on this program today. I think it was super informative. The panel was outstanding. And I've worked with several people on the panel because the RAC is about restoring American confidence, restoring American culture. When Siobhan came up, I had to come up because at the end of the day, I'm 61 years old. I was born in 1962. I know how this community used to function. We were raised properly. We had respect. Our conscience couldn't allow me to disrespect the older person. I wouldn't have any reason to want to go shoot somebody. But because of the things she said, we have changed this whole dialogue. This is the spiritual war that we fighting, y'all. The rack is just one part of it. Like Ann just said, we need to have a network for services, mental health, job training, education, CPL. Everything needs to be under one umbrella, so if you need help, you could just go get the help you need. But what we have to do is get our kids to start thinking properly, because that's what the problem is. Our kids do not think properly because of the video games, because of the music, and as a result of that, they're desensitized. Social media has allowed them to not care about things that's important. So it's up to us as parents to stop. I'm not going to let my children go awry, because I'll still whoop them. You understand? And so, you know, I don't care if they call the police on me. The bottom line is that we were disciplined and we knew not to do the wrong thing, or we get a whooping, or we get punishment. And that's the same thing. If there's no consequences for our actions, then you can do whatever you want. So all I do is encourage everybody to help when you can, fit in when you can, and just use common sense approaches. And I'm so grateful for this forum. Thank you.
We are running a little bit behind, but we want to go ahead and give the chiefs a little bit of time just to give us some closing thoughts.
Thank you again. I'm glad everyone came out, and I just appreciate the fact that we have these kind of forums so we can get at different ideas, and we can present solutions to some of these ideas to stop this gun violence. So thank you all. Stay engaged, stay informed. God bless you all.
I echo that. Thank you all for having us here tonight. Just real quick, I want to leave with some food for thought. In 1999, the DOJ sued the largest cigarette manufacturer because of the irresponsible use that they were pushing into our communities. I would suggest that the guns in our community should meet the same fate. I'm not trying to be anti-gun, but when you see guns in every movie, now you're seeing these manufactured guns that are painted a certain color. Why not hold these gun manufacturers accountable for the dead black kids in these urban communities that nobody seems to care about? Thank you.
So I'm going to start off by thanking everyone coming to the city of Southfield. For this event, I certainly want to recognize our elected officials. Please stand and recognize the accepted the whole program, our elected officials. Also members of the Chiefs Advisory Board for Southfield. Stand and recognize Chiefs Advisory Board. Chiefs Advisory Board. Look over there. You know, our Chiefs Advisory Board, they're the ones over here. They're the time to serve them, so the PG brought them all together. And so give them another round of applause for their volunteers. We want to thank our dynamic moderator, Ms. Ronnie Dawn. So to take the time, we're going to be busy with using your experience to keep the conversations moving, and it's been so effective. Absolutely. Also, Moms Demand Action. Thank you to a number of you who took the time to write these great ideas down. We'll be able to put them on a document and forward it up to decision makers. Thank you. We have also our friends from the Southfield Community Anti-Drug Coalition who also assist with that. Round of applause for them. And so I just want to continue to thank our community. Bernice, love you to death. See that energy she has. And we love you and we appreciate those comments. Absolutely. And then finally, real quick, because you didn't get a chance to speak, Mr. Jackson. Mr. Jackson, come up here real quick. And I let him introduce himself, but he works in the Southfield Public Schools, and we had a question about some things with schools. So if you can have a brief comments about that real quick.
Thank you, Chief. My name is James Jackson, I'm Chief of Staff for Southfield Public Schools. And what I wanted to just lift into the conversation was, we have all of these great ideas and things that we'd like the departments to do and legislators to do.
but there's something that everybody in this room can do. One of the things that we are most concerned about is recognizing early signs of when someone may become violent. If there's a behavior change in your student, in your child, there are resources within the school system and within the community that can help as an early intervention before a situation snowballs into a violent act. And a lot of times we say, oh, they're just being teenagers, oh, they're just being kids. My child would never do anything like that. If there's a change in behavior, partner with your schools, partner with your community leaders to get resources to a student or a child that is displaying a different type of behavior than what you normally know them as. That is something that everybody in this room can do, and as a school administrator, as a district administrator, we need you to do that. We need you to help prevent something before it becomes a school shooting or a mall shooting or any type of violent act that involves a gun. I just wanted to lift that into the conversation. Thank you.
Also, we have representatives from Crime Stoppers of Michigan. Crime Stoppers of Michigan over here. You all see the work that they do, fielding all those tips and providing that information to law enforcement to help solve crime. Crime Stoppers of Michigan, thank you so much for being here. Also, my partner in this whole endeavor, Chief King from Farmington Hills, Farmington Hills, is doing this well. Comes with a lot of knowledge, a lot of energy, and again, when PG came to Chief King and I, right away he says, I'm in. So give him a round of applause. And that point, matter of fact, I'll turn the microphone over to him.
All right.
I'll be brief. Thank you all for coming out, giving a lot of great ideas. If I could wrap it up into one thing real quick, we are listening and we're ready to work. And we're ready to be part of this. With each and every one of you, with each and every person that couldn't be here, whatever their reason, we're going to serve our communities, we're going to protect our citizens, and we're going to try to get these guns out of these kids and out of taking our lives too early, all right? Thank you all for coming.
I'll be even briefer than Chief King here. I want to thank you all for having us here in this forum. And in closing, I want to say it does take a village to make a change. So we appreciate all of you coming out here, and change starts, with one movement. So hopefully this is the movement that will actually help to start some change. So thank you. God bless you. Good night.
Thank you everyone for coming.